Well met, Knights of the Order. This is Muscle and Magicka, and you, my friend, just accepted a follow-up quest. Now, very quickly before we get to the point of this video, there's actually one thing that I neglected to mention in the last quest, and that is there's a third subcategory of people that I do not typically go out of my way to recommend counting calories for. And that is anyone in their early to mid to maybe even late teens. Reason being, you're a kid, okay? You've got a lot of things to worry about other than tracking calories, like school, hanging out with your friends, I don't know, making out at recess, whatever it is you kids do. Point being, you're still growing, right? You're still developing, and from a physiological standpoint, I'm not sure it makes the most amount of sense for you to be restricting calories at this stage of your life. Unless, of course, you're overweight or obese, in which case I would simply recommend increasing activity level and maybe focusing on smarter food choices. Psychologically speaking, you got the rest of your life to obsess over calories and fixate on achieving your perfect ideal goal physique. For now, you've got more important concerns like enjoying life, enjoying the time spent with your family, figuring out whether or not Stacy and Kevin are actually going steady, or if Stacy just said that because she's jealous of Sally. And that kind of brings me to the point of this quest. Counting calories and flexible dieting, and I'm just going to sort of lump the two together since they sort of go hand in hand, or forearm in forearm. It can be a restrictive process at times, and I say this as somebody who's been flexible dieting for a long time, as well as somebody who tends to have a kind of obsessive personality by nature. I mean, I could never go with alchemy and herb collecting in an RPG. No, like, you don't understand. I would be level 1, I would have max herb collecting skill, no other skills whatsoever, and I would just be constantly dying because I would be in some high-level zone that I had absolutely no business being in, because I have to collect those herbs. I gotta get all the herbs. And unfortunately, this obsessive mindset of mine is not one that lends itself well to flexible dieting. However, I think that this means that I've developed some pretty solid insight on how to execute flexible dieting in a very adherable, sustainable manner. I think I've found ways to maintain control so that it doesn't control me, but I'll be sure to make more videos on that in the future. What you have to understand for now is this. When it comes to dieting, restriction is simply the name of the game. I mean, any way you look at it, you're going to have to restrict. In fact, every single form of dieting out there deals in restrictions. They are all restrictive by nature because in order to enact weight loss, you have to enact a calorie deficit, which is just another way of saying restricting calories. However, the difference is that clean eating and most of these other mainstream fad diets achieve this calorie deficit through uncertain, sort of arbitrary means, typically by restricting or even removing, in some cases, entire food groups, like carbs, if we're talking about Atkins or South Beach, fat, if we're talking about low-fat diets. Sometimes they remove multiple food groups if you're on one of those more highly selective diets like paleo or clean eating. And in my humble yet right opinion, ultimately, long-term, restricting and removing entire food groups is simply not going to be sustainable for most people. And if you don't have sustainability, you're done. You've got nothing. That's why you gain the weight right back and then you gain some more on top of it. In my opinion, the most sustainable and actually least restrictive approach is counting calories and flexible dieting because it ensures that calories are the only thing that you restrict. I mean, the whole point of flexible dieting is that you don't have to worry about food choices. You don't have to worry about restricting certain food groups. Granted, you operate underneath the parameters that flexible dieting sets up for you because you're attacking the problem at the source, right? In order to eat less calories, which is the ultimate end goal, you simply eat less calories because you're keeping track of those calories and you know that you're eating less calories rather than jumping through all kinds of mystical hoops and hoping that you end up in a calorie deficit. And that's the other big problem with clean eating and these other fad diets is that while they are engineered to hopefully, probably result in a calorie deficit, they don't always actually elicit that calorie deficit that you're looking for, as I demonstrated in the last video. The great news is, if you happen to like any of these approaches, if you like clean eating or, paleo or ketogenic diets or whatever the case may be, you can still eat under those diets and still adhere to the parameters set up by flexible dieting. The only difference is now you're simply tracking your calories to ensure that you're hitting the right calorie goals. If you want my humble yet right opinion on what is potentially 8 million times more dangerous, mentally speaking, than counting calories, and again, this is talking primarily to mentally stable, healthy people who have physique goals, especially people who are having trouble reaching them, allow me to spin you a story, a cautionary tale, if you will, which is actually based 100% off of true, real-life events. There once was a young warrior who had a vast array of abilities at his disposal. However, he was told that if he really wanted to maximize his DPS, he was only allowed to use a few of those abilities. The rest of them were effectively put off limits for him. Now, this didn't make a whole lot of sense to the warrior, but he was a good warrior, he did what he was told, and on top of that, he saw a whole bunch of other warriors doing the exact same thing, so he just decided to roll with it. Now, as time went on, the warrior found it increasingly difficult to stick to just these few abilities that he was allowed, and in fact, just the very fact that the other abilities had been put off limits made them exceedingly tempting to use. And the worst part of it is that these were good abilities. You know, they had their time and place, and they could have easily been effectively incorporated into his greater rotation. But he wanted to do what the magazines told him, he wanted to do what the media and the gurus told him, so he continued to deprive himself, he continued to restrict himself. And because of this, he started to develop this dichotomy in his head between the good abilities that he was allowed to use and the bad abilities that he was not allowed to use. This continued right up until the point that he was allowed his very first cheat day. And I'm telling you, when he had the very slightest taste of just one of those bad abilities, he lost all control. It was over. I'm telling you, I went out and I got pizza, I got Chinese food, I bought a box of Toll House cookies, I bought a bag of those delicious white chocolate covered pretzels, I bought stacks of those pepperoni flavored Pringles. Each and every single one of those delicious high calorie foods that had been off limits, that had been put on my do not eat list, I had to have them all. And I had to have them all that day, and it only got worse from there. I mean, I managed to offset a deficit that I had spent an entire week creating in one day, which of course meant that I was then going to have to increase my deficit the next week to make up for it, which was only going to lead to more compensation and more drastic binges down the line. Not particularly helpful when it comes to weight loss, downright dangerous and unhealthy when it comes to mental stability and fostering a proper, healthy, stable relationship with food. This is where my personal bias comes from. Okay, this is the vicious cycle that I am trying to stop from being visited upon other valiant knights who are simply following orders, who are simply trying to do what they're told, like I was. Now I realize that flexible dieting has pitfalls of its own, okay? It's by no means risk-free. However, I would much, much rather help you navigate through that zone, which I've been through, which I think has much better quest rewards, than to watch you wander off and become lost in the forest of bro magic forever, which is a terrible zone which has absolutely no quest rewards. Alright, that's not true. There is some loot in the forest of bro magic, but I'll touch upon that in the next quest. I hope you gained some experience points from this. Don't forget to like the video, as it does help us increase faction reputation for the Order. And of course, if you want to continue questing in strength and wisdom, subscribe to the channel and join the Order of Muscle and Magicka. Until next time, my friends, stay vigilant. Oh, f you, Bowser. Damn blue shell's not gonna do you a damn thing, and you know it. Oh. Hey, what up, Knight? What are you still doing here? Oh, you gotta hand in the quest? Wait a minute, what is that? Bro magic. Listen, you better get out of here. This feels like a pretty high level.
What's up, guys? It's Mike with Six Pack Shortcuts.
What the hell is
In this
that?
video, we're gonna continue our goal to get huge.
Ah! Oh, get out of here! Ah!